What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to the Week 5 Squirrel Report. Today, we are talking starts and sits for this week. We got a bounce back bonanza for some underperforming players from Week 4, and we're buying and selling at the end of the show. Let's get to it. Did you guys know the Denver Broncos have given up the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers so far this year? The Broncos defense is so bad. It has more holes than the biannual Idaho Tattoo and Piercing Convention in Boise. It has more holes than season 3 through 7 of Game of Thrones. It has more holes than OJ's Alibi. And it's because of that I'm throwing Garrett Wilson right into my starting lineup again here in Week 5. I know, Zach Wilson is still on that team, but Zach looked less bad in Week 4. This matchup is too good to pass up. Don't overthink it. Trust the matchup. Trust Garrett Wilson's talent. He is a must start in Week 5. Joe Burrow's not healthy. We all see that. So I don't want to take shots at Joe when it's obvious he's not 100%. I'm going to skip the jokes and get right to the chase. In leagues where I've got Joe Burrow, I have benched him for a streaming option. You can do that when your quarterback is averaging 7.9 fantasy points per game. You're allowed to bench him. Please don't drop him, but you can bench him. But Jamar Chase? There is zero chance I am benching Jamar Chase right now. He is one of the most talented wide receivers in the game. I don't care who his quarterback is or how banged up he is. Chase is going to keep getting volume in this offense. He's wide receiver 6 with 40 targets so far. And now T. Higgins is likely going to miss some time with a rib injury. Did you see on Twitter, T was like, I can't lay down on my side, it hurts too much. How on earth do you play football if you can't even lay down? Gosh, it's no wonder I never made it in the NFL. 49ers and Cowboys. Both these defenses are legit. They are 2 of the top 3 teams in the NFL, along with the Detroit Lions. We're still starting CMC, obviously, and I'm still starting Debo and Brandon Ayuk. You guys know that I love Ayuk this year. He is wide receiver 9 in fantasy points per game. Debo is wide receiver 20. And I'm also starting George Kittle. I know he's super frustrating, but you knew that when you drafted him. Honestly, this is going to be the 49ers all year long. We're not going to get 4 awesome players every single game. CMC is always going to eat because that's just the way it's going to work. And then everyone else is going to rotate based on what the defenses are giving Brock Purdy. That's the guy I'm not starting. As far as Dallas, I'm rolling out the same 2 starters that we've been trusting all year long. Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to lower expectations for both, but I cannot stay away from this star-studded matchup. You're basically starting everyone from this game. All right, let's do a rapid-fire bounce-back bonanza here. Brian Robinson gets the Bears this week, and through 4 games, the Chicago Bears have allowed 132.8 fantasy points to running backs. 5 different running backs have scored at least 15 fantasy points against Chicago. 5 running backs! We've only played 4 games. Bears, Brian Robinson, bounce back. Aaron Jones scored over 26 fantasy points in Week 1 before missing the next 2 weeks, and then running into a tough Lions defense last Thursday night. But the Raiders have allowed the 12th most fantasy points to running back, and I'm expecting a more classic version of Aaron Jones this week. Last week we took an L, but this week, bounce back. Prior to last week's dud, Michael Pittman saw 34 targets over the first 3 games, and he was clearly Richardson's preferred target. I know, it sucked last week, but don't let it damage your calm, especially against the teeny tiny Titans who have only given up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. When a man like Anthony Richardson loves another man like Michael Pittman, you're in for a broke-back bounce-back, baby. Arizona just gave up 48.7 fantasy points to CMC. They also gave up 28 fantasy points to the Cowboys running backs and 27 fantasy points to Saquon. Joe Burrow's limited, this offense is limited, so we should see plenty of Mixon in this Bengals offense. This one's a battered Burrow Bengals bounce-back, bitches. All right, here we are at the Squirrel Report Hotline, taking your questions for Week 5. Let's get to it.
Hey, what's up? I'm a big fan. I just wanted to call in and say that I love your guys' show, and I do have a question for you. I have 2 players that kind of came out of nowhere this year, Nico Collins and Kyron Williams on my roster. I'm just curious to know if you guys think either of these guys are a sell-high candidate.
Oof. Boy, Nico Collins and Kyron Williams, I get the question, right? Because you didn't draft these guys to give you production this year. And now you're thinking about, do I need to play them all the time, or can I move them on for somebody else that maybe is better for my fantasy squad? I'm not moving either of these players. Nico Collins is getting so much volume here. He's top 20 in receptions. He's top 5 in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. CJ Stroud is out there slinging it right now. There is no way I am moving on from Nico Collins, who is wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game He's a guy I'm definitely going to keep on my roster because he's an emerging wide receiver in this offense. Same thing with Kyren Williams. This dude is getting so much work. Ronnie Rivers is not someone that's going to be taking touches away from him. Nobody has played more snaps at the running back position than Kyren Williams this year. If he's going to get that kind of volume and that kind of work, I am using him every single week. I understand the question, but I'm not moving on from either of these two players. All right, next question.
All right, Daniel. Who we starting this week? Full point PPR, 12-man league. I got Zay Flowers at Pittsburgh, and then I got Christian Watson at Las Vegas. You got to pick one of those two, knowing that I have Justin Herbert on a bye this week, and I got Jordan Love at quarterback. Do I combo that with Christian Watson, or do I go with Zay Flowers? What you thinking?
Guys, this is tough. This one comes from _BC Media. The question, obviously, here from me is, do you really trust Christian Watson here in the second week that you've seen him? I can't. Not if you're also starting Jordan Love, who we don't think has really been producing at a top level. He's a guy that's been finding a way to be able to get to 20 fantasy points, but I don't think this is going to continue. I'd rather have Zay Flowers. The dude keeps getting volume. He keeps being involved in this Lamar passing attack. By the way, the Pittsburgh Steelers have given up the 6th most points to fantasy wide receivers. I'm going to go with Zay Flowers here until I see more production from Christian Watson. Sorry, I don't love the stack this week. All right, one more question.
Squirrel, interesting situation in the league. Burrow was dropped. Is he someone to pick up? And if you do pick him up, what quarterbacks would the team be willing to drop to pick up Burrow? For example, a Deshaun Watson. Do you hold? Or would you pick up Burrow and drop Deshaun? Justin Fields, right? Would you hold Justin or pick up Burrow? I think you get the drift. Thanks. Hope the question's useful for you. Bye.
Great question here. Listen, if someone drops Joe Burrow in my league, I'm absolutely going out there and picking him up because he's better than almost anybody that's on the streaming radar. I understand he doesn't look good now, but fantasy football is played over an entire season. It's not just through the first 4 weeks. So I'm not going to drop Justin Fields. I think there's too much value there. This kid is too good, especially if he starts utilizing his legs within this Bears offense. The guy can still be a top 5 quarterback. But right now with Deshaun Watson, the guy who is the second most off-target quarterback in the NFL, yeah, I'm fine if you want to move on from Deshaun and this Browns offense in order to add Joe Burrow, because there's just so much goodness there towards the second half of the season if Joe Burrow gets right. And guess what? If he doesn't, he's a bench player for you anyways. You can just drop him, and it's no big deal. But you had the opportunity to have a top 5 quarterback in Joe Burrow if he rights the ship. All right, guys, thank you so much for those questions. Keep bringing them using the Squirrel Report hotline. That phone number is real. You're hearing it. We want to get more of your questions for next week. Thank you so much for calling us. All right, let's make some moves. We're headed into week 5, and I got a few guys I'm looking to trade for or trade away. The internet has been losing its mind. No, well, yes to that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. Guys, we need to get some more woosah in your lives. Nobody at ESPN is more plugged into this team than this guy. And I'm telling you, the Lions are bringing Gibbs along at the speed they are comfortable with. He doesn't need to get 20 touches. This team is 3-1 and they're playing good football. But hear my words. As Jahmyr Gibbs learns this offense and we get deeper into the season, especially with J-Mo coming back, taking the tops off of defenses, you're going to see Jahmyr Gibbs starting to get more production. Not just touches, but you'll see it turn into production. This is a kid that you will want in your roster for the fantasy playoffs, week 12 and beyond. You want to trust me here. I'm buying Jahmyr Gibbs, and you should too. A lot of times we want to sell high on a player when we're trading him, right? Well, with Raheem Mostert right now, it's more like sell medium. And Raheem Mostert is a guy you should be moving on from. He's a 31-year-old, oft-injured running back for this Miami Dolphins team that's going to get Jeff Wilson Jr. back, has Devon Achane that looks like the second coming right now, and what are you going to do at the running back position? You can't play all 3 of them in your fantasy lineup. Raheem Mostert still has fantasy value for managers that are struggling with the running back position, but for you, you should look at this as ability to move on while the moving on is still hot. Get out of the Mostert business. Sell medium. There's nothing wrong with selling medium. All right, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Guys, please do me a favor. If you enjoyed the show, just send it to one friend. Like, not the friend you're playing in fantasy this week. They don't need my advice. But you can definitely send it to the rest of your fantasy league. And hit up the Squirrel Report hotline. It is absolutely free. We love you guys. Be kind to each other and be kind to yourself. Good luck here in week 5. We'll see you in week 6.